أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والذين إذا ذكروا بآيات ربهم لم يخروا عليها صما وعميانا والذين يقولون ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. So inshallah we're starting with ayah number 73. In ayah number 73, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is continuing the mention of the characteristics of Ibadur Rahman, the very devout slaves of the Most Merciful. This is the 8th characteristic that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions for them. In this ayah, a translator writes, who when reminded of their Lord's signs do not turn a deaf ear and a blind eye to them. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِّرُوا بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ ذُكِّرُوا comes from the word tadhkir, which means to remind someone. And when that word tadhkir is combined together with the preposition of ba, when the word tadhkir is combined together with the preposition ba, it has the sila ba, the letter ba following after the harf jar. It basically refers to being reminded of something by means of something being presented to someone, being presented with something. And the word dhukiru is the passive form. So what this will mean is that when they are presented with, وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِّرُوا بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ, when they are presented with the signs of their Lord and their Master Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says, لَمْ يَخِرُّوا عَلَيْهَا سُمًّا وَعُمْيَانًا. That the translator, the word, to explain this word, it takes a little bit of understanding. The word kharra, yakhiru in the Arabic language, it is used in a number of different ways. To use it very, very literally speaking, it refers to something falling. Something falling. Alright? Kharra min as-sama. That he fell from the sky. So, the word in the Arabic language literally refers to something falling. However, when it's used in a particular context, you can say more of a figurative usage of the word. When it is used more figuratively, it has a few different meanings. Some of the scholars of the lexicon, they write, خَرَّ الْمَاءُ يَخِرُّ خَرًّا إِذَا اشْتَدَّ جَرْيُهُ. That the word kharra, when used with water, it refers to water gushing. Water gushing and running very, very in great speed, with a lot of force. Similarly, in the Arabic language, it would say خَرَّ الْحَجَرُ يَخُرُّ خُرُورًا, which means صَوَّتَ فِي إِنْحِدَارِهِ. That refers to the fact that if you strike a rock, strike a stone, or you throw a rock, and when it falls, it makes a loud noise. That the word kharra, yakhurru, is used to describe the fact that that rock, made a lot of noise. That stone made a lot of noise. Now, having said that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also in the Quran says, فَلَمَّا تَخَرَّ تَبَيَّنَتِ الْجِنُّ. Now, this is kind of a more interesting, again, somewhat in the usage of the meaning of falling. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the fact that Sulaiman alayhi salam, he passed away while he was standing there leaning on his staff, supervising the jinn who were constructing, who were building. And the Quran says, فَلَمَّا خَرَّ, when he fell, تَبَيَّنَتِ الْجِنُّ, that's when the jinn realized, that's when they understood. So, for this particular reason, the word kharra also refers to waqa'a, for something to occur. For something to occur, for something to happen, like someone's death occurring, someone's death happening, is also described with this particular verb, with this word. Alright? Now, in this particular ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Lam yakhirru," they do not fall, alayha, upon it, referring to the signs, that they do not fall upon the signs. Summan refers to not hearing, right, deaf, and umyanan refers to not being able to see or blind. So they do not fall upon it, deaf and blind. Now, what does that exactly mean? What does that precisely refer to? So this has been translated a number of different ways, and they are all very fascinating in their own regard, and they all provide some very insightful reflections and some very insightful thoughts. One of the meanings of this is that وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِّرُوا بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ, when they are presented with the signs of their Lord and their Master Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَمْ يَخِرُّوا عَلَيْهَا سُمًّا وَعُمْيَانًا, they do not happen upon them. وَقَعَ لَمْ يَقَعُوا عَلَيْهَا, they do not happen upon them, meaning that they don't, they're not there deaf and blind, like they don't stop paying attention, but rather they pay attention. So it's stating something in the negative, that this is not how they act. They don't just, it's not like they're just physically just present there, but they're not paying attention. That's what Allah is saying. So when they are presented with the signs of their Lord, they don't just sit there and not pay any attention. Rather, they pay attention. That's one meaning. And that's what Mujahid, one of the early Mufassirun, he says, لَمْ يَسْمَعُوا وَلَمْ يَبْصُرُوا وَلَمْ يَفْقَهُوا شَيْئًا. That it's not that they're just sitting there, not looking, not listening, not paying any attention, not trying to understand what's being said. Another way to understand this is that this is talking about lam yakhirru, right? Some have mentioned that it's the idea of falling into sajda. Lam yakhirru alayha summan wa umyana bal kharru. That it's saying that it's not, when they're presented with the signs of their Lord, it's not that they just kind of just sit there, not moved by it at all, but they are moved to fall down in front of it. To fall down in humility before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they're so overwhelmed by the greatness of their Master, their Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this would tie in very well with what we discussed earlier about the whole dynamic of sajda. That Allah told us that those who don't believe in God, when they're told to do sajda to Ar-Rahman, they refuse to do so. Mar-Rahmanu anasjudu lima ta'muruna wa zadahum nufura. They say, what's this Ar-Rahman? Should we just do sajda because you said so? And then they run further away. They turn even further away. So the second way that this has been interpreted is that they fall down. They are humbled. And this can be done physically, or even verbally, or even just it's a state of mind and it's a state of heart. It's a state of being. That when a believer comes upon something magnificent from the signs of his Lord and Master Allah, he or she literally falls down in sajda, or says, Subhanallah, MashaAllah. They praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, La ilaha illallah, right? They're affected by this. That's the second way that it's been interpreted. The third way that it's been interpreted, which is very powerful, it's very, very thought-provoking. Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah ta'ala says, كَم مِّن رَجُلٍ يَقْرَأُهَا وَيَخِرُّ عَلَيْهَا أَصَمْ وَأَعْمَى. How many people do you find who read the Quran, they observe the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether it's reading the Quran or looking at what Allah has created, the magnificence of the creation of Allah, and they might even go through the physical motions. They might say what's appropriate, act in a way that's appropriate, do what everyone else is doing, but they are completely unaware of what's actually going on. They're not paying any attention to it. It's not having any impact on them. It's not having any effect on them. It's not penetrating the surface. It doesn't go beyond the surface. And I talked about this previously, that it's like the words, they've perfected the words, but they don't go down further past their throats. It doesn't go past further than their throats. It does not reach the heart. So this is the idea. Qatada rahimahullah ta'ala similarly says, لم يصموا عن الحق ولم يعموا فيه فهم والله قوم عقلوا عن الله وانتفعوا بما سمعوا من كتابه. That this is talking about a group of people that they're not the type of people who physically hear what's being recited from the Quran, what's being said from the Book of Allah, but they don't hear the truth inside of it. They don't hear the truth. They don't see the reality that it presents to them. But rather the believers are those people who understand, reflect upon, they think about what Allah is saying. And then they benefit from what they hear from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's a very interesting interaction between a couple of scholars. Ash-Sha'bi rahimahullah ta'ala, who is from the Tabi'un. He's a student of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. One of his students, Ibn Aoun, he says that, سألت الشعبي, I asked my teacher, Ash-Sha'bi, قلت الرجل يرى القوم سجودا ولم يسمع ما سجدوا. He said, رأيت الرجل يرى القوم سجودا ولم يسمع ما سجدوا. A person sees people in sajda, but he did not hear why they went into sajda. He walks into a room, he looks up from his phone, and next thing you know, everyone's like, Subhanallah. And he's like, Subhanallah. Right? Like he hears everyone say Subhanallah, he hears everyone say Allahu Akbar. He walks into a room and he sees, people in sujood, but he did not hear what made them go into sujood. He did not, come into contact what had this profound impact on them. So he asked, Ayasjud ma'ahum? In that situation, should a person go ahead and do sajda because everyone else is doing sajda? And it must have been something profound. So should he go ahead and join them in sajda? He looks up from his phone, completely unaware of what's going on, oblivious, impervious to his surroundings. And he hears everyone say, Subhanallah, Allahu Akbar. And he looks up and he's like, oh, Subhanallah, Allahu Akbar. Should he do that? Because you would think there's something admirable about at least doing that much. There's something noteworthy about at least following along. Shabi said, he read this ayah, فَتَلَا هَذِهِ الْآيَةِ وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِّرُوا بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ لَمْ يَخِرُّوا عَلَيْهَا سُمًّا وَعُمْيَانًا. He read this ayah and then and then he said, أَنَّهُ لَا يَسْجُدْ مَعَهُمْ. He should not just go ahead and go into sajda. لِأَنَّهُ لَمْ يَتَدَبَّرْ آيَةَ السَّجْدَةِ. Because he did not hear why they went into sajda. He did not have that same experience that they had. He should not placate himself. He should not delude himself. He should not fool himself by just kind of falling in line with everybody else, thinking that there's something admirable or noteworthy about doing so. He shouldn't do that. فَلَا يَنْبَغِي لِلْمُؤْمِنِ أَنْ يَكُونَ إِمَّعَ. It is not befitting of a believer to just go with the flow, to just do what everybody else is doing. Why are they doing it? I don't know. That's not how a believer operates. But a believer is a very astute, observant, intelligent, reflective individual. A believer thinks and ponders and reflects and believes. That's what a believer is. And he said, بَلْ يَكُونَ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ مِّنْ أَمْرِهِ. A believer should have conviction and knowledge and understanding about what he or she does and why they do what they do. وَيَقِينٍ وَاضِحٍ بَيِّنٍ. And a believer should be upon some very clear, firm conviction. A believer should be resolute. Not just somebody who's just kind of doing it, I don't know why. If everyone's doing it, it's probably a good thing. That's not how a believer operates. And some of the Mufassirun have written about this particular idea, and it's very powerful. One of the more contemporary scholars of the Quran and Mufassirun, Mufti Shafi' Uthmani rahimahullah, he wrote about this, that what he basically says is that what has become so common is that people listen to the message. Now understand, this is really challenging a believer. This is a bit challenging. And it's not very pleasant to hear, right? And somebody could misconstrue what is being said. But listen, that it is not befitting of a believer to just listen to the message, but without any purpose or commitment. Without any purpose or commitment. Oh, I guess it's nice. Sure, why not? It seems like a more religious thing to do, but no purpose or commitment. And act in a manner that the real message has not been registered. Like unless and until it registers with you. And if it hasn't registered, then you have to really put some thought into it why you are not impacted by it. You have to get to that point. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. The goal is to be impacted. And this is something very, very interesting that this ayah brings about as a challenge to somebody trying to realize their faith. So these are the three ways that this لَمْ يَخِرُوا عَلَيْهَا سُمًّا وَعُمْيَانًا has been interpreted. That when they are presented with these signs of their Lord, their Master Allah, number one, they don't just happen upon it, or they're not just physically present, not paying attention. Number one, a believer pays attention. He hears the name of Allah and he's immediately alerted. Secondly, what it talked about is that a person, disbelievers, they don't fall, they're not moved, but a believer is moved by what he or she hears or sees. The third thing is that a believer is not the type of person who will just do what everyone else is doing, but will actually have thought and reflection and observation about what exactly is going on and why that person is doing what they're doing. Now, something else that the Mufassirun writes, to kind of see this and observe this dynamic within the Quran, is that there are two extrapolations from this ayah. Number one is ad-dalala bil-mantuq, to reflect on what was said. And what basically is being said is that from the qualities of Ar-Rahman is to pay attention to the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to reflect on them, to think on them, to observe them and be impacted by them. And this is something Allah has spoken about many places in the Quran. وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُمْ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَعَلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. That when the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are recited upon them, it increases them in their faith and in their reliance upon their Lord and Master. Allah says in Surah At-Tawbah, وَإِذَا مَا أُنزِلَتْ سُورَةٌ فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَقُولُ أَيُّكُمْ زَادَتْهُ هَذِهِ إِيمَانًا فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فَزَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَهُمْ يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ. That when a surah comes down, when it is revealed, then there are those from amongst the people that it is revealed to, that it is sent down to, that they say, who amongst you was increased by this in faith? And those who believe, they are increased in their faith because of this Quran, and they are encouraged to continue on further down the path of living the Quran. As they come across more Quran, it motivates them to keep on working harder to live the Quran. But there is a secondary extrapolation that can be taken from this ayah as well, and that's referred to as ad-dalala bil-mafhum. Ad-dalala bil-mafhum. That there's also a meaning that is being implied here. The meaning that is implied is that those who do not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who have not submitted to God, those who do not live their life in the servitude of Ar-Rahman, they have not accepted, they have not internalized the idea of being the slaves of the Most Merciful, then they are not moved, are not affected, are not impacted, no matter how profoundly and tremendously the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are presented to them. It has no impact on them. It has no effect on them. In Surah Luqman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِ آيَاتُنَا وَلَّا مُسْتَكْبِرًا. When our signs are recited, presented to this individual, وَلَّا مُسْتَكْبِرًا, this person turns around arrogantly, كَأَن لَّمْ يَسْمَعَهَا, as if he or she did not even hear anything. كَأَنَّ فِي أُذُنَيْهِ وَقَرًا, as if their ears are blocked, like they didn't even hear. They are so unfazed by what is being said. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this in the same passage, in a similar fashion that we read about earlier. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after saying, وَإِذَا مَا أُنزِلَتْ سُورَةٌ فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَقُولُ أَيُّكُمْ زَادَتْهُ هَذِهِ إِيمَانًا فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فَزَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَهُمْ يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ فَزَادَتْهُمْ رِجْسًا إِلَى رِجْسِهِمْ. That as for those whose hearts are diseased, they are poisoned, they are polluted, that as more Quran is presented to them, more of the signs of God are presented to them, it only increases them in their disease, in their illness, in their filth. It only further increases them in the problems that they have. So these are two different extrapolations that we can take from this. Ibn Atiyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he writes, وَهُوَ أَن يَخِرُّ سُمًّا وَعُمْيَانًا هِيَ صِفَةُ الْكُفَّارِ. That to basically not pay any attention to the signs of Allah, this is from the attributes of those who do not believe in God. وَهِيَ عِبَارَةٌ عَنْ إِعْرَاضِهِمْ. In fact, it can even exemplify the fact that they're trying to ignore and neglect the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he specifically presents linguistically, and this is more of a linguistic kind of fascination or something very nuanced about this particular ayah and the language that's used here. There's a type of expression in the Arabic language. They would say, قَعَدَ فُلَانٌ يَشْتِمُنِي. قَعَدَ فُلَانٌ يَشْتِمُنِي. Or they would say, قَامَ فُلَانٌ يَبْكِي. So-and-so stood and cried. And that expression in Arabic, I'm literally translating, قَامَ فُلَانٌ يَبْكِي, that person stood and was crying. Or that person stood and cries. But more so how it would be appropriately translated is almost like that person started to cry. The emphasis is not on the standing of the person, but the attention is being drawn to the fact that the person started to cry. So similarly, when Allah says, لَمْ يَخِرُوا عَلَيْهَا سُمًّا وَعُمْيَانًا, it's not so much talking about whether they sat down or they laid down or they fell into sujood. More so what it's talking about, the fact is that they're not moved by it. And the fact that they remain completely oblivious and impervious to what's going on around them. So this is the 8th quality characteristic of the Ibad Rahman that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shares here, that whenever the signs of their Lord and Master Allah are presented to them, they are moved, internalize it, and they strive to figure out, how can I live this? And how can this become a reality within my life? In the next ayah, ayah number 74, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. A translator writes for this, those who pray, our Lord, give us joy in our spouses and offspring. Make us good examples to those who are aware of you. Now, this is a dua that is being presented once again, that they are believers, the Ibadur Rahman are the type of people who make the following dua. And I'm going to split the dua into kind of 2 portions for the sake of understanding and explanation. The first part of the dua says, هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. The word hab comes from the word hiba. وَهَبَ يَهِبُ. Hiba. That word basically in the Arabic language means gift. It means gift. And so وَهَبَ يَهِبُ is to gift something to someone, to give something as a gift. A hiba is a gift. And so here it's saying hab lana, gift to us. Gift to us. Give it to us as a gift. Now it's very fascinating. It's very interesting. Many places in the Quran, there are lots of du'as where we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for certain things. Some places in the Quran, when we're asking for something, the word i'ata is used. The word i'ata. Alright? Where basically you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give something. Some places in the Quran, when a dua or a request is presented, it's with the word ita. Atina fi dunya hasana. Atina min ladunka rahma. Alright? Grant. To grant. It has a little bit more of a 2 things. Number one, it's a little bit more figurative. So a lot of times the scholars mention that i'ata or a'ta is used for the meaning of something that's more material. And ita is for something more immaterial. That's why I like the 2 du'as. Atina min ladunka rahmatan. Grant us mercy. Atina fi dunya hasana. Grant us the good of this life and the good of the next life. It's something more immaterial, so it's more figurative language. Secondly, some scholars have also noted that it has more gentleness within the tone, more graciousness built within the tone. It's a more gracious term. But then there is a third word that is used when requesting something, when requesting to be given something, and that is the word hiba. Right? هَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ ذُرِّيَّةً طَيِّبَةً فَهَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ وَلِيًّا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا. This word is used. And this word means gift. Like grant, please, O Allah, give us as a gift the following. Now, what's very fascinating, what's very interesting is that the word hiba is used for being given something or requesting something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a gift, specifically when speaking about family. When speaking about family. And children are always mentioned in this type of dua. Like this one, couples together both spouse and child. Spouse and child. But the other examples in the Quran, هَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ ذُرِّيَّةً طَيِّبَةً هَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ وَلِيًّا, are all about children. But because this one couples the spouse and the children together, we can generally say it's about family. And one of the very profound reflections from this is the fact that because family is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Family is a very, very, very precious gift from Allah. And as is the case with a lot of gifts, there are many who are not grateful and respectful of the gifts that they are given. وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ. It's a very common problem with a gift. Because the dynamic with the gift is a lot of times, it's bestowed upon someone. A gift is given to someone, bestowed upon someone, through sheerly by virtue of the generosity of the giver. And so a lot of times a person is a lot more prone to taking a gift for granted than something that maybe a person had to go out and earn and work for. But a gift a lot of times is also a gift many times. A lot of the things that we have that are beyond our capacity are only achieved through a gift. Because it's outside of my scope, it's outside of my capacity. I can't afford it. I possibly could not afford this. You know, somebody sees you with something really, really nice that doesn't seem to kind of fit overall with just your overall lifestyle. Right? There's a particular type of car you drive. There's a particular type of home you live in. There's particular types of furniture that you have. There's a particular type of clothing that you wear. And that's not to say good or bad, but it's just particular. It's specific. And it speaks very specifically to overall who you are and what Allah has given to you. And it is all from fadl min Allah. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. It's all from the blessing of God. We're not complaining, but it just fits in, and it all is consistent with what Allah has given you and where Allah has placed you in this dunya and in life. And then there might be just one particular thing that does not seem to fit with the overall lifestyle that you live. Right? Somebody comes over to your small apartment. You don't even have furniture, a lot of furniture to sit on. You drive an older vehicle that kind of gives you some trouble. And they walk into your apartment and there's a 70-inch 4K monstrosity on your wall. Right? It's like a spaceship landed in your living room. And somebody walks in and they're like, time out. Something's going on here. I'm not sure what it is, but something is. Right? Either you sold a kidney, right? وَالْعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ astaghfirullah. Haram. Alright? Just to clarify. But like something's up. Something's going on here. Did you rob someone? Right? Like what occurred? What happened? It doesn't fit. And immediately, the person doesn't even have to ask you. The person just kind of walks in. It's like, oh, okay. Right? And they see this. And right away, you're like, oh no, that was a gift from my dad because apparently that's the most useful thing I needed in my life, apparently. Right? But you immediately clarify, this is a gift. Right? It's beyond what you could afford. It's outside of your scope. So the two dynamics with a gift are, a lot of times a gift is way beyond what our scope is, what we could expect, what could be expected of us. And secondly, very few people are grateful and treat with respect the gifts that they are given. They become very, lackadaisical, or they take the gift for granted. And these dynamics, they play out with family as well. Most people don't have a lot of respect and a lot of, value for the blessing of having loved ones in your life. People who care about you, people who love you. They don't value that. They don't understand how profound that is. And secondly, is that most of us, not all, because at the same time, we speak to what the norm is, but we also identify the fact that there are always exceptions to the rule. There are people that the greatest struggle in their life is from the side of their families. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easier for them. It's a very, very severe test from Allah. It's a severe ibtila. It's a very severe test. But speaking to the norm is that most of us are not really worthy and deserving of the people that Allah has put in our lives. We're not worthy of the love we receive, the care and the consideration that we're given. And I only mention this to remind myself, and in the light of tahdith ni'mah, that really kind of busy and preoccupied here, with the class going on and the intensive going on and stuff. So it doesn't leave me a lot of the time and the opportunity to maybe be able to tend to family and be able to visit family. And so what happens is that, I live maybe 40 miles from here. And so I don't have the opportunity to kind of commute back and forth, drive back and forth. So because I'm not able to go, that my elderly father, he drove out today to come visit me after the Dhuhr. Which is shameful and embarrassing as a son. But again, very humbling as well, to kind of realize and to think about the fact that I'm not deserving of, such care and consideration, such love and kindness and graciousness and generosity. And that's the reality of these very precious gifts that Allah has given us, the loved ones within our lives. So وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا, that Allah gift to us from our spouses and our children قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. Now the word قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ, it's a phrase in the Arabic language often translated as the coolness of the eyes. But just to explain very, very quickly, the word qurra in the Arabic language can be traced back to, it's got the same root letters, but it is used in two different meanings when it comes to the base of the word, the origin of the word. The first meaning that it's used in is of the meaning of al-luzum wa thabat, for something to be set, for something to be stable. The second thing, it's also used in the meaning of shiddatul buruda. Al-qurru bima'na shiddatul buruda. That the word qurr also refers to something being very cool, like very relaxing. Bima'na surur, very pleasing, very relaxing, very comforting. So it refers to something being stable, which also adds to comfort, right? I mean, imagine, if you're riding in a vehicle and it's shaking and rattling the whole time, you're not comfortable. Versus if you're sitting on a chair on the ground and it's not shaking and rattling, it's comfortable. It's a comfortable seat. And similarly, specifically the Arabs, obviously, being in the desert, right? The heat was representative of discomfort, difficulty, right? The Arabs and the Texans, right? They had this idea, right? Everyone's experienced our summer, right? So the heat is representative of discomfort, the coolness, right? That seems to never come. But the coolness is representative of comfort and relaxation. And specifically when it comes to the coolness of the eyes, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Because now try to visualize, try to experience both examples. Because the Arabic language is very expressive. It's meant to be experienced. Right? So try to experience, try to imagine, try to experience that. Imagine your vision being very blurry, or your eye twitching and hurting. So if your eye was twitching, or your vision was blurred, think about how disorienting that would be, how uncomfortable that would be, how nerve-wracking that would be. And secondly, the sensitivity of the eyes, we all know, we're all familiar with, that the Arabs specifically would use this example because, again, imagine being out in the desert. It's very hot. It's dry. And then when the wind does blow, it's hot, dry wind, and then it blows the sand up into your eyes, hot, burning sand into your eyes. Now imagine how much that would make your eyes burn. And then, as your eyes are burning and itching, and you're rubbing them, and it looks like you're trying to scratch your own eyes out of your head, imagine if you come across some nice, cool, clean water. Somebody's got some water inside of a water sack where it keeps it nice and cool. And they pour that water out, you pour that water out into your hand and you splash it into your eyes and clean your eyes out. How refreshed would you feel in that moment? How refreshing would that be? How invigorating would that be? That's the idea that is represented in Qurratu A'yun. And that's what the dua is basically asking for in regards to family. That as you deal with the whole world around you, I mean, just imagine everything you have to put up with. You go out there in the world, and then there's work, and there's difficulty, and stress, and adversity, and all the different problems that you deal with, you put up with. And then when you get home, that moment you enter into your home, the moment that you hear the sounds of your family members, you can hear their voices, the moment that you lay eyes on them, it's exactly and even more remarkable than the experience that the desert traveler has when he splashes that cold, clean water into his burning eyes, dry, itchy eyes. That's how refreshing it is to be in the company of these people, to see them, to hear them, to be with them. So هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. Now, how exactly is that achieved? Right? That's what this means, and that's what it represents. But how is that achieved? Like, what does that mean? Like, what allows for that to be the experience? What's involved with that? That's the real question. And so, there's a couple of different things that can be mentioned here. First and foremost, some of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum and the Mufassirun and the Imams who have commented on this ayah have mentioned a number of different things, such as Ibn Abbas, Al-Hasan al-Basri, Qatada, many others have mentioned the fact that this refers to that you find them to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That when your family is devoted and dedicated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you see them pray, when you see them read Quran, when the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an integral part of your home, then that is a huge part of bringing about this coolness of the eyes, this happiness, this joy, this comfort, this relaxation. That peace, that tranquility that you experience within your home is realized through not just one individual within the home, but the entire family being committed to the same cause, the same mission, and that is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the obedience of God, the worship of Allah. That's a big part of that equation. And Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah ta'ala, he was asked about this ayah, and he says, أَنَّ اللَّهَ أن يري الله العبد المسلم من زوجته ومن أخيه ومن حميمه طاعة الله لا والله ما شيء أقر لعين المسلم من أن يرى ولدا أو ولد ولد أو أخا أو حميما مطيعا لله عز وجل. That there's nothing more comforting to a person than to find the people that you love to be devoted and dedicated and committed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's nothing that brings greater happiness. That's one part of this. That's one part of the equation. The second part of this equation is that the type of gentleness, the second thing that factors into realizing this, where your home and your family is a profound part of the happiness, the tranquility, the peace, the comfort that you find in your life, is the second part of that equation is the love, the care, the consideration, the affection, the kindness, the generosity, the understanding, the forgiveness, the mercy that helps to develop these bonds and these relationships of family, that strengthens them. When we save our best for home, when we save our best for home, not our worst, right? There's a very interesting kind of observation. And I'm not sure if y'all will agree with me or have seen the same thing or not, but there's a very fascinating observation, at least something that fascinates me. That it seems like the first layer or the first level of realizing good character within a person's life is that a person kind of learns to be a little bit more courteous, respectful, understanding, polite, kind, like outside in public, whether it be at work or just outside, in the public domain. A person's very polite, very respectful, very kind. But when they come into the community, in the masjid, then that's the guy that will bite your head off. That's the guy who you're trying to make sure that he doesn't even see you or notice you. Because he's probably going to yell at you about something, or he's going to pick a fight with you about something. Then the second layer of character, kind of realizing character development, is, okay, a person is being very nice and polite and respectful at work, in public. Okay, yes, please, thank you, no problem, you're welcome, right? Very nice and polite, respectful, kind, understanding. And then even in the community, holding the door open, letting somebody go first, shaking hands, being the first to say salam, remembering, kind of asking people, how are you, how's your family? Like, is even well behaved within the community. But when that guy goes home, he walks into the house, sees his kid, hey, stupid, what are you doing? Right? Walks into the house, the kids are like, yay. He's like, shh. I come home and it already starts. I'm not even inside. I haven't even taken my shoes off yet. You people are like wild dogs. Right? Who am I going to have to put on a leash today? Right? Just starting to yell, snap at everybody. Hey, what's going on? Where's this? Why's that? Right? At home. It seems like the last place and the last people that are afforded any type of love and affection and understanding and mercy and forgiveness and kindness and generosity are the people nearest and dearest, closest to us. Our own family members. And it's very, very problematic. And I'm only speaking from my perspective. Everyone can think about their own experience. But what I need to understand is that, what's the justification? Well, I go out there, earn a living, deal with that, stupid boss I have. My coworkers are wild animals. I deal with all this nonsense out there. Have to drive through traffic, deal with all this. And when I come home, I don't want to have to deal with any nonsense. I'm tired, okay? I earn a living for this family, don't I? I put bread on the table, don't I? What more do you people want from me? Right? It seems like that's a justification. But nobody worked harder outside than the Prophet ﷺ. And nobody was kinder inside their home than the Prophet ﷺ. Never raised his voice on his family. let alone strike anyone. We can't even talk about raising a hand. Ma daraba qattu. Never raised his hand. We can't even talk about raising a hand. Never raised his voice. So kind and considerate and merciful and generous. Compassionate and loving and understanding. That is the first place and the foremost place where we really have to work on building that character. That the only time that we converse, that we communicate as a family cannot be to just deal with the business of the home, to deal with the affairs of the home. Hey, did you get this done? Did you get that done? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Did you do your homework? Did you clean your room? I talk to my kids. I was just talking to him right now. I asked the idiot if he did his homework. Isn't that talking? What do you want me to do? What more do you want from me? Wal-'iyathu billah. Right? So that care, that consideration. The Prophet ﷺ, subhanallah, set such an example, such a remarkable example, that the Prophet ﷺ used to do the household chores. That the Prophet, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, there are two narrations. She was asked what's the first thing the Prophet ﷺ would do when he got home. And you know the du'as and the supplications, say salam and recite the du'a when he entered. But what's the first thing he did? And there's two narrations. One narration says, she said that he did siwak, he brushed his teeth. And the second narration says that he used to kiss his wife when he came home. So even in that, he would clean his mouth, he would brush his teeth, and then he would kiss his wife. That's the first thing he did when he came home. And he would embrace his family members. That was the last thing he'd do before he'd leave his home. When his daughter Fatima, she's a grown woman, she has children of her own. When she would walk into her room, he'd get up and go and hug her and kiss her and hold her hand and come and sit down with her. And hold her hand while he sat. That the Prophet ﷺ, we all know how he interacted with children. The Prophet ﷺ goes to Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu's home, his uncle. And one of the babies in the home, like a grandchild or something, is crawling around. The Prophet ﷺ was laying down. It was very, very hot. He was laying down. He picked up the baby, started bouncing the baby on his chest. And the baby got a little too excited and urinated, peed, and it got on the shirt of the Prophet ﷺ. And the aunt of the Prophet, Al-Fadl, she freaked out. This is the Prophet of Allah. Happen to anyone, you'd be embarrassed. The Prophet of Allah. Like, that's it. We have to throw this baby away now, right? It's gone. Khalas. That's it. Let it out into the wild. Right? It peed on the Prophet ﷺ. But the Prophet ﷺ told her, relax, calm down. It's okay. It's easy. It's a baby. It's a baby. And then the Prophet ﷺ, she's like, let me at least wash your shirt. And he goes, I can wash my own shirt. I remember how to do it. And he went and he washed his shirt, cleaned it up. And then he came and he laid down again. And then he picked up the baby and started playing with the baby again. That was the behavior, the conduct of the Prophet ﷺ. When the Prophet ﷺ is praying salah and his grandson crawls on his back, climbs onto his back, and the Prophet ﷺ stays in sujood longer as to not make the child fall. When the Prophet ﷺ is giving the khutbah and Al-Hasan radiallahu ta'ala anhu walks up to the Prophet ﷺ, he's still a baby, and he lifts his arms up because he sees grandpa and all he thinks, right? And he lifts his arms up and the Prophet ﷺ stops, steps down from the minbar, picks him up, hugs him and kisses him. And then, of course sees that there's an entire masjid observing this. And then the Prophet ﷺ says, Inna ibni hadha sayyid, this son of mine, he's a leader. And then the child wants to be put down, so he puts the baby down. Kid runs off and the Prophet ﷺ goes back on the minbar and continues the khutbah. That type of care and consideration. The Prophet ﷺ had a neighbor, he was a Persian man. He used to make, a type of dish, tharid. He used to cook this type of food, like a porridge almost, that the Prophet ﷺ was very fond of. Very fond of. So he came over one time to the home of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, O Messenger of Allah, I've made that food that you really like. So please come on over to my house. Right? Instead of because you want the Prophet to come over to your house. Right? What'd you do last night? I hosted the Prophet at my house. What did you do last night? I'm not talking to you anymore, right? That's what happens, right? So he said, please come on over. And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, I have plans with Aisha. We're hanging out together. So I can't. And he said, okay. And then he comes back a little while later and he's like, please, I made it for you. Please come on over. The Prophet ﷺ says, nope, I've got plans with Aisha. Sorry, I appreciate the invite. Right? Think about how many times we engage in superficial rhetoric, but the Prophet, right? Your buddy calls over, he's like, hey, I got some folks coming over, some guys coming over, come on over. The Prophet ﷺ said you should never turn down an invitation. Woman, you don't follow the sunnah? It's a sunnah, woman, right? Think about it. This is the sunnah. He is the sunnah. So he says, no, it's Aisha time. Sorry, I can't. Third time he finally comes over and he's like, I've made arrangements, I've made enough food, please come over and bring Mother Aisha with you. Al-Mu'mineen Aisha radiallahu ta'ala with you. And then Prophet ﷺ said, wait, Aisha, would you like to go over and have some of that amazing food? And she said, sure, it sounds like a plan. And then they both went over. This is that care and consideration. Putting family first. That's what helps to provide this. And then the third part of the third component is the dua. The dua. And then you make this dua. But it's got to be a combination of all three things. I can't be behaving, rudely and obnoxiously and sidelining my own family and then very, melodiously making dua. هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. What are you doing? You treat your family like garbage and then you come and you make this dua. لَمْ يَخِرُوا عَلَيْهَا سُمًّا وَعُمْيَانًا. Congratulations. That's precisely what that verse was talking about. That's precisely what that ayah was talking about. No. So number one is getting on the same page in regards to the obedience and the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, realizing what a tremendous blessing we have to be able to share our lives together. Number three, bring the best of what you can offer to your family. Give them the best of what you have. And then number four, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for dua. Not in no particular order, but it's got to be a combination of all four. They're all pieces of the puzzle. And it's got to come together. And then lastly, at the end of the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا, which again translates as, and make us, إِجْعَلْنَا, make us, لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, for the most God-conscious, imaman, role model. Make us a role model, make us an example for the most pious and righteous. For the most pious and righteous. And what this is basically talking about is, there's a lot of discussion even in some of the classical books of Tafsir, that could this somehow, how do we reconcile this with the idea of humility? Being humble, not being arrogant, not wanting to be, better than everyone, or calling ourselves being better than everyone, and so on and so forth. No. What this is actually reminding us of, and what this is actually teaching us, is the fact that just as we aspire to be the best in terms of our education, we want the best of education, we know there's nothing wrong with that. A believer should be highly educated and should have the best education. We aspire to have the best careers and the best jobs, and we have no problem with that. But what we should be aspiring to more than anything else, we should be at the top of our list in terms of what we want to excel in regards to, more than anything else, should be our deen. That we should, أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ. A Sahabi comes to the Prophet ﷺ and says, I want to be with you in paradise. Right? إِذَا سَأَلْتُمُ اللَّهَ الْجَنَّةَ سَلُوا الْفِرْدَوْسِ. When you ask God for paradise, ask for the highest stages of paradise, the highest levels of Jannah. So our spiritual aspirations should be the greatest. And remember, context. Never take something out of context. It's already talked about being humble. Marru kiraman. It's already talked about not thinking that you're better than anyone. But when we try to think that, oh, the only way that I can remain humble is for me to remain very unambitious and very lowly and basic and minimal in my practice of the religion because I don't want to be arrogant. Oh no, I don't want to learn how to read the Quran too well because then I might think I'm better than other people. That's stupid. That makes no sense. That's contradictory to everything we've been taught. الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Right? Like we've been commanded, we've been implored, we've been encouraged to strive for very high levels. Ihsan. لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةً. We've been told to strive for ihsan, excellence, beauty. Like to be beautiful in our practice of the deen and the religion. So this is a trick and a trap of shaitan. That we somehow think that being mediocre will result in humility. No, being mediocre will result in apathy and atrophy. Spiritual atrophy and spiritual apathy. That's what mediocrity will bring about. If you're mediocre for long enough, you stop caring about the quality of what you're doing. But you strive for excellence. And humility is your job. You got to work on it every single day. But you don't replace humility with mediocrity. That is not a concept in our deen. That is not a concept of our spiritual paradigm. That is not from our spiritual structure. Alright? So to strive, وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا, to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us a role model for the most righteous and pious. There's one, and I'll conclude and end with this, something that is very fascinating linguistically within this ayah, is that the word وَجَعَلْنَا means make us. We're talking about a group, plural, وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ أَئِمَّةً. Normally it would be أَئِمَّةً. Make us leaders for the most pious and righteous. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا. It would be أَئِمَّةً. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the singular imaman. So there's a lot of discussion from the mufassirun as to, what are some of the benefits of Allah using imam and singular, make us a leader, an example, a role model, us, for the most pious and righteous. So a few of the reflections and thoughts that some of the scholars share is that, first of all, linguistically, you can actually use a singular in this type of a grammatical construction. Because when you use a singular, it basically is talking about that type. Like make us the type of people, make us like a role model for the most pious and righteous. But the second thing is, اجعل كل واحد منا إماما. The second thing is make each and every single one of us a leader and a role model and an example for the most pious and righteous. And then the third one is أرادوا اجعلنا إماما واحدا لاتحادنا واتفاق ملتنا. That what we're basically saying in this dua is not only make us pious and righteous to the point where we are role models and exemplars for even the most pious and righteous, but on top of that, oh Allah, keep us united. Keep our hearts together. Keep us one unit. Do not allow us to divide. And that unity will be a huge part of why people will look up to us, and why people would follow us, and why people would admire us. Is that unity that we would display, that we would demonstrate. So it's almost like the first part of the dua is realized within the second part of the dua. That gift to us, the coolness of the eyes amongst our family, in our home, and then unify us onto your worship and allow us to grow, continue to grow together in devotion and dedication to you, to the point where people will look at us as an example. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. So inshallah, with that we'll conclude today's lesson. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the ability to practice everything that's been said and heard. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallah bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.